platforms this morning. I had a connection problem last week, which I forgot to fix. And with my platform that allows me to go on YouTube and Facebook together. So I'm dealing with that again this morning. But again, as always, hope that everybody, as you're coming on, had a great, wonderful weekend, etc. Going to be talking today about when God has need of you. Trying to put these two devices together here. Going to be an interesting lesson this morning. Going to be pretty short, pretty swift. It's been a long weekend for me. Lot going on. And I still want to get on here and just continue to do that which God has called me to do and called us to do as we work together and encourage one another in our callings. So I'm going to give just a couple more minutes for everybody to come on. Trying to see if I can send some invites. Sent some invites out earlier, but let's see if I can tag some people here. You know, these platforms are like ever changing, and keeping up with them is such a challenge. We're going to be in the book of Jonah this morning, chapter 1, looking at a little bit of what happened with Jonah and his story and how that ties back to us on today. Because if we're not tying the Bible to where we are and today, then we got to stop and ask ourselves, what are we doing, right? We got to be able to tie it in and be able to get the application working for us on today. All right, so it's about 4 minutes after. I want to go ahead and get started because I want to definitely try to be finished in the next 15, 20 minutes. So I want to start with a question today, and the question is, are you running? Are you running? And the answer is yes. And the answer is always yes, because if we qualify the question, the answer can only be yes. So to qualify the question, I just want to start by saying that running can be to or from, right? And so the question becomes, as we expand it, are you running the race for which you have been called, running to? Or are you running away from the task at hand, running from? So no matter where we are in life, we're always running. We're either running to, okay, or we're running from. And I would also argue that in life, in this idea of running to and from, I would add to the argument that even when we're on break, right, as it were, we're still running. It's called a breather. And there comes a time in life when we always need a breather, but guess what? The race is not over. And so we find ourselves continuously running. And so I want to look at Jonah this morning to talk about his experience, his situation, and his running, and then take that and catapult it into where we are today and get a little bit of a spiritual understanding, spiritual insight on what that means. So I'm going to do chapter 1. The book of Jonah, it's 4 chapters, a very short book. And when you stop and read the whole book as together in one setting, it's a very, very powerful story. It has a lot of nuggets, a lot of good stuff in there. But I just want to take one aspect of it on today and just kind of take a look at that. Not really get into a heavy spiritual breakdown, but just look at it. Just look at it at a very common level of what this story means to us. All right. So it says, starting at, this is verse 1. I'm going to do the entire first chapter. It says, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord sent out a great wind on the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken up. Then the mariners were afraid, and every man cried out to his God, and threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten the load. But Jonah had gone down into the lowest parts of the ship, had lain down, and was fast asleep. So the captain came to him and said to him, "What do you mean, sleeper? Arise, call on your God." Perhaps your God will consider us so that we may not perish. And they said to one another, Come, let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this trouble has come upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. Then they said to him, Please tell us, for whose cause is this trouble upon us? What is your occupation, and where do you come from? What is your country, and of what people are you? So he said to them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Jonah is then thrown into the sea, right? So it says, Then the men were exceedingly afraid, and they said to him, Why have you done this? For the men that he fled from, for the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then he said to them, What shall we do to you, that the sea may be calm for us? For the sea was growing more tempestuous. Verse 12. Hey, good morning, Judith. Good morning, missionary Vernice Hodge. God bless you. Good to see you on this morning. So we're in the book of Jonah, it's chapter 1, and I'm proceeding with verse number 12. And he said to them, Pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm for you. For I know that this great tempest is because of me. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to return to land, but they could not. For the sea continued to grow more tempestuous against them. Therefore they cried out to the Lord and said, We pray, O Lord, please do not let us perish for this man's life, and do not charge us with innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done as you have pleased, or as it has pleased you. So they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice to the Lord and took vows. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So on this morning, we're talking about, are you running? The question this morning is, are you running? And we're saying, yes, we're always running. We're either running to something or running from something. Running to meaning, hey, we're running to the purpose, the task that God has given us. So we're running from it. And even when we call ourselves on break, taking a breather, we're still in the race. So the race is not over. So we're always running. And so what we see here is that God has called Jonah to a task, and Jonah has decided that, guess what? I'm not going to do it. Jonah has basically said, you know what, God, no. And so we find in the end, when we get to the very end of the story, that Jonah was mad at God because he knew that while God was telling him and instructing him to go down to Nineveh and tell him that the city was going to be destroyed, he knew there was a very different reality. Jonah knew that there was a very different outcome that was going to take place. Although God was saying, hey, let's go tell them I'm going to destroy the city, right? And so Jonah knew that God was gracious and merciful. And so because of God's grace and mercy, Jonah was like, why are you going to waste my time sending me down there to threaten these people, to tell these people that the city's going to be destroyed, proclaiming death over them when they deserve it? That's how Jonah felt. They deserved the death. When you know you're going to change your mind and forgive them, you're going to change your mind and let them live. So Jonah says, I'm not doing it. I'm going to go down to Tarshish instead of Nineveh. And so that's what he proceeds to do. And so on this morning, I said, because I want to be very brief this morning, but I want us to be able to take this part of the story. At some point, we're going to take this whole book and just really break it down because there's so many spiritual nuggets in here. But in this part of the story, I want us to address the question of why do we run? We know we're always running. But on today, I want to address the issue of us running from. Why do we run from what God has assigned to us? Why do we run away from the challenge or the task, the purpose that God has set before us? And I want us to take these suggestions that I have on this morning, and I've just brought a few things I want to bring to light for us to think about and to consider, so that as we continue to do what God has called us to do, as we every week get up on Make It Happen Monday and begin to start a new week, begin to push forward and what God has called us to, in spite of the challenges, I want us to be able to take these things and to consider them and to think about them. Good morning, Evangelist Sledge. God bless you. So why do we run? First, I want to look at some personal and talent or internal challenges that we have that cause us to run from what God is sending us to. Sometimes the task looks too hard. We're like, I don't think I can do that. We think we're not qualified. Oh, how can God expect me to accomplish or to do that or to handle that? It's outside of my realm. We don't have what it takes at the time. We may look at our situation and say, you know what? Maybe when I was younger, I could have done this. Maybe if I was a little older, I could do this. Maybe if I had XYZ resources. And so a lot of times we don't think we have what it takes to accomplish what God is calling us to do and sending us to, right? Sometimes we just don't want to be bothered. We've decided, hey, you know what? This ain't for me. Sometimes we're thinking, what's the use? Why does God want me to do this? Why is God picking me for this? Why doesn't God utilize someone else? And sometimes we feel like we just don't have the time. Hey, you know what, God? I got a whole lot going on right now. So maybe Susie down the street or Bobby next door can handle this. But right now, I just don't have the time. Maybe sometimes we feel like we have better things to do. Hey, instead of wasting my time as Jonah going down to Nineveh to try to save these people who deserve to die, there's something else I could be doing my time. So I'm gonna go down to Tarshish, by way of Joppa. And so maybe we find ourselves in a situation where we feel like we have better things that we could be doing instead of what God has asked us to do. Because remember, we're talking about on this morning when God has need of you. Maybe sometimes we prefer to do something else. Maybe we decide, hey, you know what? Instead of being an intercessor, I'd rather prophesy. Instead of encouraging people, I'd rather just sit back and pray for them instead of going and having conversations with them. So maybe we feel like we prefer to do something different or in a different way. Maybe sometimes we find ourselves tired of the assignments that God has been giving us because we feel like we're just like it's overwhelming us. Although the Bible says that He'll never give us more than we can bear. But maybe sometimes we just feel like, hey, you know what? These type of assignments, I'm just drained. Can I do something different? Hey, good morning, Sister Howard. God bless you. Maybe we don't think we'll be accepted. So these are all reasons why we run away from what God has called us to do. Won't run away from the task that God has for us. Maybe we think won't be accepted. Maybe we think we're not worthy. Sometimes we think that other or someone else will be better suited or better fitted for this, and so that becomes our excuse. That becomes our reasoning. Hey, Sister Schumann, God bless you this morning. Let's see here. Maybe we just don't see it at all. Like, why? Why does God want me to do this? What is the purpose of this? Because remember this, that when God assigns tasks to us, a lot of times, well, He always shows us the end from the beginning, but a lot of times He does not show us the middle. And that's where that why comes in. That's when that, I just don't see this. I don't understand this. So that becomes our reason. Maybe we're just drained. Maybe we're just tired. Maybe just in our bodies, we're just physically, we're like, you know what? I need a break. And so therefore, I don't want to do this. So this becomes our reason to say, no, I'm not going to run this task. I'm not going to run this race. I'm not going to run, this leg that God has called me to. Right. Maybe we feel like right now, I just need a break. You know what, God? I've been doing task after task. I've been doing this after that. Everything you've asked of me, I've done my best. I've pushed, I've pulled. And right now, I just need a break. Okay. Maybe our circumstances, our personal circumstances, our personal challenges are taking a toll on us. And therefore we feel like, hey, wait a minute. I need somebody to be ministering to me instead of me out ministering to someone else. So all of these are reasons or excuses or things that we pull upon to say, I'm not going to run to, or I don't want to run to. And the last one I have here is maybe we feel like what we're dealing with is more important. Hey, maybe my own challenges, maybe my own life situations right now are more important than me going address or talk to Bobby Sue about hers, and Billie Jean about his, etc. And so as we address this question of running, because remember, we're always running. We're either running to what God has called us to, or we're running from it. And even when we're on break, even we're like, I just need a breather, we're still in the race. And so the question is, in this race, how are we going to deal with the challenges? Okay, and so I chose Jonah because when we look at Jonah had decided up front that, when God said, hey, go down to Nineveh and tell the people that the city is going to be destroyed. Jonah was like, yeah, God, that's what you say. That's what you say, but you're gracious, you're merciful. And these wicked people who deserve to die, I know you. You're going to have me go down there and give them this prophetic word, speak this damnation over them. And then in the end, I'm going to be walking away and they're going to, having given this strong word of rebuke and destruction. And you're going to let them live. So Jonah's like, no, I'm not doing that. And so, when we look at Jonah and his decision to be disobedient, we have to stop, because remember, we always want to take the Bible and bring it into where we are today. And so we want to stop and say, what are the things in my life that are perhaps stopping me or challenging me from doing that which God has called me to do? What's stopping me from moving forward in the task that God has assigned to me? There are times when I think about Make It Happen Monday and I'm like, oh God, as much as I love teaching, there are days when, you know what? I don't feel like preparing a lesson. I don't feel like, I'm tired, I'm drained, and I don't want to study. But I love teaching. I know this is what God has called me to do. And so I have to push past that. I have to not allow my inner self and not allow the enemy to bring those sort of thought process in the way that stop me from doing that which I've been called to do. Because when it's all said and done, it doesn't matter how I feel. Even days when I get up and I'm physically ill and physically should be saying, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling well today. I'm going to cancel the program. No, I push through. Because when the program is all said and done, each Monday, I feel so wonderful. I feel so fulfilled. And that's going to be key as we continue looking at this. Why do we run? And are we running? Yes, we are running. Are we running to? Are we running from? But that fulfillment that I feel at the end of each broadcast is powerful. And I'm going to show you how that fits in, even in your life, in just a few minutes. So those are interior, personal challenges that may cause us to veer away from what God is calling to us. Remember, the title of today's lesson is When God Has Need of You. Now, that may sound awkward. God needs me. Oh, yes, God needs us. And when he needs us, there's a reason. We're going to tap into that in just a minute as well. And so now we want to look at the exterior challenges. Maybe we don't like the person or the people that God is sending us to. So therefore, we decide we don't want to do it. That was Jonah's issue. Jonah decided these people deserve to die. I don't want to go and give them a word from the Lord and then have the Lord forgive them. No, let them die. Maybe we think that these people, a person God is sending to, is not deserving of what God is getting ready to do for them. Maybe we feel like, hey, you know what? No, that should be for someone else. Maybe, we think their history. We know their history. We just don't want to get involved. Maybe we don't think they're going to change. We think, hey, you know what? God is going to send me to minister to this person. And they're not going to change because this is who they are. Maybe we think that they're not going to understand or appreciate what God is doing for them or getting ready to do for them. Maybe we think that they will not appreciate our sacrifice or the time that we're taking to be obedient to God's word and ministering and to pouring into their lives. Maybe we think that the change in them, if it comes, is going to be temporary. And so our minds can be bottled with so many things and reasons why we don't want to move forward with what God is assigning to us, when clearly God is saying, I have need of thee. Okay. Maybe we think they're just hard-headed. And you know what? This person is just hard-headed. And so therefore, no, God, I don't want to do that. And maybe we think they deserve a hard time. And you know what? They're reaping what they're sowing. What they have sown. And so, no, I don't want to go and be a blessing to them. No, I don't want to go minister to them. No, I don't want to help them because you know what? These are the seeds they've sown and these are the consequences of their actions. And so all of these things become blockades to us doing what God has called us to do. But they also, the more critical part is it also becomes or should become a question in our mind as to the Holy Spirit that lives within us. Because irregardless of what a person has been through, what they've done, what type of life they're living, etc., God operates off of mercy and grace. And this is what Jonah knew. God operates off love, off of forgiveness. And if Jesus Christ can forgive the entire world for all time, for all sin, how is it that we would allow our minds or allow the enemy or allow our emotions to rise up and say, God, no, because of we're looking at the other person and we're deciding their unworthiness, or we're deciding their undeservingness, as Jonah did, or we look at ourselves and we disqualify ourselves for whatever reason. No, God says, I called you, I qualify you, I have need of you. And so when we take and we look at this idea of, are we running? Yes, we're always running. We're either running to what God has called us to do at whatever pace, or we're running from it. But even the times we're saying, hey, I just need a break right now. I just need some time off. I need a sabbatical. The race is not over, so we're still running, right? And then we have to understand that in this race, there are consequences to our actions. There are consequences and their outcomes, because you're gonna have both. Your consequences being the negative side of things, and the outcomes being the positive side of things. Because everything that God calls us to, everything that God says, I have need of you for, when we fulfill those things, they're going to be these awesome outcomes. And all the time that we are on hold or on pause, there are consequences, and those consequences, one of brings displeasure to God. God is displeased with us not continuing to move forward rapidly, okay, or at a steady pace, or what He's called us to. Us not being obedient, us not recognizing, not moving to what God is saying, I need of you, need what I have need of you for. It affects us and it affects others. It sends a message to God. And the question is, what is that message? It sends a message to others who are around, who see and know that, you know what? I know that brother is called to do XYZ. I know that sister is gifted in XYZ area and she's sitting on her gift. What message are we sending to those individuals? Because people do see. People look at you and they can tell that you've been called by God. People can look at you and know that, hey, you have an intercessory spirit within you, or whatever it is. And so what message do we send when we are not operating in our gifts and doing and flowing in that which God has called us to? What message are we sending to ourselves? We're saying to ourselves, I'm not capable, I'm not worthy. The devil is a lie. If God called you, made you, created you, shaped you, formed you, you are worthy and you are capable. And God says, I have need of you. And that's all that matters. And so when we find ourselves in situations, we have to ask ourselves, is fear overcoming our faith? And in doing that, that's going to bring about a missed opportunity. And if we allow fear to overcome our faith, others miss out on blessings because of our pausing, because of our lacking. Or will we miss out on the blessings of God because of our pausing, our lacking, our not continuously moving forward in that which God has said, I have need of you for, right? Is it rebellion that's going to bring in punishment? Maybe it's a growth opportunity spiritually that we don't see. Because in every situation that God sends us to, I believe that there's a benefit in the end that God has, not just for those He's sending us to, but for us. And so maybe it's a growth opportunity spiritually that we may be missing out on. Maybe it's a test that if you don't pass this time, you're going to end up having to take it again. And so in this Make It Happen Monday, I want to leave us with this thought process. God said, Jonah, I have need of you. I need you to go down to to Nineveh. And I need you to give this message to the people that the city's going to be overturned. And Jonah says, no. Those people are evil. They deserve to die. I'm not taking the message, so I'm going to take another route. And of course, you know the story. The storm rages. There's a conversation among the other sailors. They end up throwing Jonah over. Jonah goes into the belly of the whale. He goes to this prayer with God. And in the end, when you get on to chapter, very last verse of chapter 3 and into chapter 4, there's this conversation that's taking place between God and Jonah, as God does exactly what Jonah said He would. God, the people repent. They put on the sackcloth and ashes. They cry out to God, and they repent of their sins, and God forgives them. And then He changes His mind about the destruction. And Jonah says, "Well, isn't that what I said from the beginning?" So Jonah goes through this whirlwind of back and forth with God, and then God sends a plant. The plant dies, and Jonah gets mad about that. So Jonah is in his angry stage, right? But in his angry stage, God begins to show Jonah something that is very critical for us. And it's one of the things I want us to really grasp on today, is that in the midst of everything that happened, okay, God was showing Jonah, I'm gracious, I'm merciful. you should be too. God is showing Jonah that as a creator, I made and created all things, plants, animal life, etc. These are human beings that I created. And you think and you have disrespect and you have lack of love and lack of care for my creation, and you value a plant over human life. So God is saying to Jonah, I need you to back up. I need you to recognize and see who I am. Hey, good morning, Bishop Burton. God bless you. And so God is saying to Jonah in this moment, in this time of Jonah's anger, and he's mad with God and he's expressing that. He's saying, yeah, God, you see? But God is saying to him, yes, I'm gracious. Yes, I'm merciful. My love endures forever. And as my child, as my daughter, as my son, God is saying to each one of us on today, the same grace and mercy that I extend to you, you ought to extend to others. The same grace and mercy that I extend to others, you ought to extend to them. Because this is who I am. And as my child, this is who you ought to be. And so when we find ourselves answering that question, are you running? We already said, yes, you are. You're either running to or you're running from. But when you're in that battle of running from, when you're on that break time, that downtime, and not moving forward with that which God has called you to, and God has said, I have need of you, we want to understand that there are consequences, that there are lives that should be changing, that are on pause, on hold. We're missing out because in the end, with everything that God assigns to us, God has a blessing for us as well. God chooses us for his own reasons. He owes us no explanation, but in everything that he chooses and calls us for, there's always something for our own good. No matter how difficult or how ugly the assignment may seem, there's something in that assignment that God says, I have a blessing for you in this. You just don't see it. You're just not aware of it. And so in every task that God assigns us, he has growth, he has development, and he has blessings attached to it. And so let's make it happen Monday as we examine and look at the story of Jonah, Jonah's anger, Jonah's decision to say, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, as we look at what Jonah was going through emotionally and spiritually, let's examine our lives and let's recognize that God has need of us. And he shows us that by giving us gifts, talents, and skills. He speaks to us when he calls us. And God is saying to us on this morning, let's not allow our inner selves, okay? Let's not allow the things that we see as challenges in our lives to become blockades to that which he's called us to do. No shortcoming that we see, no lack that we see, no inability that we see, that we think is there, should stop us from moving forward with what God has called us to. Because whom he calls, he qualifies. And so when God has need of you, recognize this, you have need of God. Because God has something in every task that he called you to that's going to be a blessing, not just to the lives of those he's sending you to, but a blessing in your life as well. Listen, it's Make It Happen Monday. I encourage you on today to stay steadfast in everything that God has called you to. Get out there and fight the fight. Recognize that no matter what looks like it is a blockade or a hindrance or a shortage or shortcoming in your end, God says, no, I called you, I equipped you. My grace and mercy is sufficient. It is sufficient for you, and it is sufficient for those that I'm sending you to. All I need you to do is trust me, walk in love, walk in grace, walk in mercy, and move forward. And every door that is closed, I will open. Every mountain that's in your way, I will move. Every valley that looks like it's too low, I'll carry you over. Whatever the situation is, remember, God is saying, I have need of you. And in that, let us understand we have need of him. God bless you. I love you. 1 week from today, let's do it again. Make it happen Monday.